HBO Max.
It's about HBO Max, and it's why I want to talk about this part of why I think this article is a little bit biased in certain areas. So it says, half of Wonder Woman 1984 viewers unsubscribed from HBO Max. Already with that headline, I've got questions.
Me too.
It's learned that Wonder Woman 1984 is an even bigger disaster than thought, as it was originally reported that half of Wonder Woman 1984 viewers on HBO Max ended up unsubscribing from the streaming service within 6 months. They were at least honest at that point where they say 6 months. You can't tell me that just because they didn't like that movie, that waiting 6 months does not mean that that movie was the reason that they unsubscribed. If they unsubscribed the next month, that's what you could say, right? Like they immediately hit, I don't want to pay for next month's subscription. Right. I also so it says the info comes via the Wrap from measurement company Antenna, where it said that about half the people who signed up for HBO Max in the days following the release of Wonder Woman were gone within 6 months, and also that more than a third of them were gone within a month. That headline is, at least to me, more accurate to what the heart of this story should be. There's too much leeway given to that headline up there because they don't put the 6 months in that headline. I have a problem with that. That's clickbait. The news isn't surprising. And by the way, I love Cosmic Book News. I agree with a lot of their takes, but I'm still going to call out this stuff when I see it. So it says, the news isn't surprising, as Wonder Woman 1984 was simply awful with its woke content and message. It was just a bad movie. I don't care about the wokeness. Like, it was just a bad movie.
It was really terrible, and I was disappointed.
I mean, I would have been okay with being that guy who she thought was Chris Pratt, but or Chris Pine. But, that doesn't make it all right.
Right.
What is also interesting is that it means that a third of the viewers didn't stick around for the HBO Max release of the Snyder Cut of Justice League in March. So those viewers must have been really turned off by Wonder Woman 1984.
What a leap.
They're making a lot of... I get it. Like they're definitely making some assumptions there that there could be a myriad of reasons. The app didn't work as well as they want. First round, but I know when Snyder Cut came out, it crashed the servers because it did so well. But part of that's because you have existing infrastructure. You're building up infrastructure on a new streaming site right now, whereas Netflix had the same infrastructure behind their stuff for the last 10 years.
Now, that would have been a more accurate headline, just anecdotally speaking, because the feedback on the HBO Max app ever since it rolled out has been atrocious.
Yep. And it works fine for me. Like when I watch it what'll happen is if I leave it paused for more than 5 minutes, I have to restart the app. That's about the only complaint that I have about it. Netflix to me is actually worse, where if I fast forward something or rewind something, the audio becomes disconnected from the video dialogue, and the audio track is is 3 seconds ahead of the video track, and then I have to leave the app and come back to get it to reline up. I don't know if that has to do with my internet connection, maybe. I can't imagine that being the case.
No, you guys have lightning speed internet here.
So it says...
sometimes.
So it says... with it learned that half of the new subscribers unsubscribed, it also sounds like WB's decision to release movies day and date on HBO Max and in theaters completely backfired. That is true. It was a horrible idea. I get what they were going for. They were trying to navigate COVID and what they perceived as what was going to happen with COVID releases. But I think a lot of those movies ended up suffering severely from that model. Disney abandoned it as soon as Black Widow did mediocre numbers.
Right.
Granted, there's a lot of reasons for that to happen. The movie was done too late. The story had already been told. It didn't really need to be made, blah, blah, blah. But then Disney, what they started doing is they started pushing your Pixar movies onto Disney Plus, but then released the Disney animated movies in theaters. So but they're lucky enough to, or at least big enough to have enough material that they can do that while pushing both networks. But I would arguably say that as far as a streaming service goes, I'd take HBO Max over Warner Brothers any day of the week. So basically, to me, they're making a lot of leaps here as far as I think the day and date release is a bigger problem for them than just saying that Wonder Woman 1984 is bad. Though arguably, I went up here and I looked at it. It says Wonder Woman 1984 has a 58% tomato meter and a 73% audience score. And then the original has a 93% tomato meter and 83% audience score. So It's a rare example where critics and fans were both they both liked the first one, and then they both hated the second one. But I do think that there's a lot of leaps being made there in this article. It says, but they've reversed course for 2022, meaning that when the Batman comes out, that is going to be theater only. They are not stupid enough to try and just put that on both of them. The Matrix, I almost did a story today about how the Matrix... was it Revelations? The new Matrix movie that's awful that we went and saw and hated. And Dune are both doing better on PVOD than they did when they were in theaters, because they're no longer available on HBO Max. Now, if you want to see it, you have to get it through, you have to pay for it. Whereas when it was in theaters, it did almost nothing, but you could just go watch it for free on HBO Max, or $16, whatever you paid a month, $15.99. So maybe what they need to do is do theater first, PVOD second, then bring them to HBO Max. Shorter theatrical window. Instead of 45 days in theaters, do 30 days in theaters, 15 days PVOD, and then straight to HBO Max. I mean, the days where you have to wait 6 months for DVDs are gone. So it says, with it learned that half the new subscribers unsubscribed, it also sounds like WB's... Okay, so they're talking about the Batman. It says, in hindsight, WB is probably kicking themselves for going with Wonder Woman 1984 as its flagship movie release on HBO Max, as not only is the movie terrible, but Warner Brothers paid both Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot as if the movie made $1 billion at the box office, which is laughable. As we see, the movie did nothing for HBO Max, and it actually sounds as if it hurt the streaming network. And in addition, its box office was abysmal at only 166.8 million, which is nothing when you really think about that. Yeah, I don't know what else they would have gone with as far as a flagship launch at that time. Gal Gadot had all the goodwill in the world built up at that point, and so did Patty Jenkins. So, I mean, outside of the fact that the executives can't predict the future, I don't know what else they would have done in that sense. But now they're saying, they go down here and they say Wonder Woman 3 is said to be in development and is said to be happening, but there are all kinds of rumors, including Patty Jenkins could be out. I doubt that. Gal Gadot could get recast in The Flash. I actually believe that could happen down the line, because they've worked so hard to get rid of Affleck, and they're like, Henry Cavill, the most popular character actor in movies right now, why would we use him? It's like they hate money. It's like they hate, they're like, look how much everybody loves Henry Cavill. Let's just keep him on the bench.
Oh.
Well, I just saw this here, like, even as bad as it is, supposedly, and it's really funny that they just decide, it's like somebody just got re-triggered by how much they hated Wonder Woman. They were just like, I'm going to write something.
Their wife made them watch it, and they're like...
Right. You know what? This movie did make me mad. It made a bunch of people mad, and that screwed over HBO Max. It still is apparently the most watched film, straight to streaming film of 2020.
Okay.
So even though it didn't make any money, like, it's still got enough attention. I guess the content just wasn't there to grab the viewers.
Yep.
So
I'm looking for the release date on
well, that's the other thing I was going to say. It was like, this is one of those first movies that was, it was in that weird, fuzzy pandemic era where
you didn't know how long this was going to go on. They had to,
yes,
they're launching their streaming service. Tenet did the same thing. Tenet did abysmal numbers in the theaters. I loved Tenet, even though it made no sense.
Weren't these movies released around the same time?
Around the same time, because Nolan saw himself. Oh man, you do hate Nolan. He saw, he was like, I'm going to be the person who's going to bring people back to the theaters, and he tried. I can appreciate that.
And I can appreciate that he failed.
Of course you can. Of course you can. The Tenet has a higher audience rating than Wonder Woman 1984, but only by like 3%. And I would argue that Tenet is an infinitely better movie than Wonder Woman 1984, even if it doesn't make sense.
It probably is.
And Joel David Washington literally sounds exactly like his dad.
Yeah,
if you close your eyes, you might as well just imagine they could just de-age Denzel Washington to do that role. Sounds just
I'd like to
him.
see that. But I mean, I guess the thing is that, like, movies like Tenet and Wonder Woman 1984, these were conceived and, budgeted and produced to be these theatrical releases. Like, so both of them had to kind of like reconceive how everything is done.
It's changing.
Yeah, and it still is.
We're in. It's one of the reasons in the next topic we're going to talk about how these industries have really begun to adapt to what I've been saying for years, long before COVID even happened. Was I said stop making $150 to $200 million movies. Make movies more. Long before The Joker was made, I said make a movie for $30 million. Focus on story. You can still use these comic book characters, but use street level characters like they do, like make Netflix's Daredevil, but make it on for the big screen and put $30 to $50 million into it to get the right actors and the right director, but with half the CGI, and watch the money. I mean, we're about to watch Jackass just dominate the box office this weekend, and it costs like $10 million to make.
That's how it's done.
Put less money into it. That way your investment is less of a failure if it goes wrong.
But these executives that make these like powerful decisions, they literally don't know how. Like they're clueless.
And they might not realize that 30 million and 166 million is like a big difference.
Yeah, that's true. They're clueless even in that sense, which should be, like a central part of their job.
Yep.
But they're not.
So it's, to me, it is interesting that I think we're going to see a change. I think for one, these types of movies in theaters are going to become farther and farther in between, and then they're going to be going straight to streaming far more frequently. They're not even doing Batgirl on the big screen. They're doing Batgirl as a movie, but on HBO Max.
That has to cut their budgets initially in half, right? I mean, even more.
At least. I'm guessing that they have a way of like a forecast model. Like, okay, we don't get to see the money initially in box office profits, but what does a movie like this get us in re-engagement through continued subscriptions online?
Right.
Right. So they have to find a way. We're probably in this era where they're just navigating how to now effectively model, like financially model, how much to put into a movie when you don't see the return right away. Because you can't tell if they resubscribe to HBO Max because Batgirl came out or just because they're like me and they want to watch reruns of Fringe. So if you can't do that outside of people filling out surveys, how do they know?
Yeah.
The only way you can really figure that out is by who subscribes when it comes out, right? So you gain subscriptions when something like that comes out. But if you have 9 things coming out at that month, how do you know which one it was because of?
They have to have some sort of metrics
there must
for
be.
analyzing that. I can't imagine how that works out, especially in terms of like how do you budget for a movie if you don't understand, or I don't even know how you make a return on a movie if it just goes straight to HBO Max.
Yeah.
Do they have like some sort of contract for them for a year regardless of the content? Is it based on each film? Is it based I don't understand how that works.
And it's going to affect how these first of all, these actors, like a lot of the money they make in these things are on back end based on profits in the studio. So contracts are going to have to be renegotiated. There's going to be a whole new model for how these actors get paid. Is it through do they have to guarantee that they have access to the numbers? So if they get if the engagement with the movie through the streaming service is over a certain amount a month for a period of time, do they get a bonus?
Right. Well, I mean, that's what that was essentially the basis of Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit that Disney settled with her, because a large part of her check was supposed to be based on how well the movie did at the box office, and they said it was going to be a theatrical only release, and then there was no metric for figuring it out through HBO Max, so they just settled with her out of court. I mean, the same thing happened. Like Bill Nye sued Disney because they were arguing. It's you'd have to look it up. It's like about like home video sales, and it's a really well, maybe we'll do a video on that sometime. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, like all of these contracts that people have negotiated are going to have to be rethought, and I imagine that this is like a golden time to be like an entertainment lawyer who's got a hold on these things, who's like looking to the future. There
is a history here that actually goes back to superhero movies. Like maybe the biggest superhero movie, the biggest first blockbuster was Jack Nicholson with the Joker. Yeah, I mean not the Joker, but Jack Nicholson with the original Batman in 1989. Because in the 70s there was a new Hollywood happening, and you had all these actors that were all about the script and the storytelling, and the directors were obsessed with script and storytelling. That's why the 70s is kind of thought of this heyday in cinema history. But at the end of the 70s, after these big balloon movies like Heaven's Gate in 1980 started just, zapping all this money in the budget and then not getting anything in return, something changed. And the agents in Hollywood got much more powerful than the actors. And they started doing packaging. And all of a sudden, the actors that had A-list credibility, they got more interested in reading the contracts than the scripts.
Yeah.
And then and Jack Nicholson is a prime example of that. Like, all he wanted to read in the 80s was his contracts. And that's when he became essentially a genius moneymaker with Batman. He was just like, I want to make money on the back end. I want to get money off of the toys. I want to get money off of this. And it was probably one of the best contracts that an actor's ever signed in Hollywood.
There was a story about like an actor, like a voice actor from the original Lion King, who turned down like a $10 million payday for dividends or something like that, and he makes like insane money still to this day. Like
that's awesome.
He took like it was like I forget, it was like $500,000 guarantee instead, and then but still it makes like insane money now from all the, you know.
Which actor do you know?
I don't remember, but it was a voice. It wasn't one of the celebrities. It was a voice actor, so it was. I don't remember which character he played. I mean, the same thing. I mean, like now, the same thing has happened in YA now, because of how much power J.K. Rowling has over her characters and her marketing, and she gets a piece of literally everything with Harry Potter's name on it. No YA author gets that anymore. If they're gonna buy up your book, they want all of it, and you're gonna get very little in the way of profits on the back end because they don't want to give up that money. One thing that's funny about the Batman thing is I was reading this thing about how embarrassed Michael Keaton was of playing Batman because superhero movies were like not, because they were not. Now everyone wants to play a superhero character, and back then he's like, it's Batman.
And they gave him a lot of grief when he was cast. So,
people think that's a new phenomenon. It is not.
No, that's been around since forever.
I remember when somebody was talking about, like, remember when they were upset about James Bond being blonde in Casino Royale? It's like, oh my god, he's blonde. So
it's not a built-in fan base; it's built-in critics.
It's built-in
that
critics.
Is so true, man.
It was the Quartering who said it, but he was quoting someone else, and that person should copyright that and
that's really good.
Make merch out of that, because it really is. It's built-in critics.
So
but
true.
That's the IP world we live in. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.